8b, factoring a trinomial. Just like, so last chapter we had something where we give you something like this and ask you to distribute and come up with what these two things were multiplied, okay? Now we're going to go the other direction. So we're going to give you a trinomial and ask you to work backwards to come up with its factors. So we're trying to come up with two binomials, because these both have two terms, that would multiply together to make this as the answer. Alright, so here are our steps. We're going to draw two sets of parentheses because we know we're going to have two binomials as our answer. And it's x, so we're going to have an x at the beginning of both of them. Okay, and then to figure out what these numbers are, we're going to use this little x. Okay, so b goes in the add spot. B just means the coefficient of the x term, the number that's right in front of the x. Okay, so that is 7. All right, and then C, which is this constant term, the number at the end, is going to go up here. So we are looking for two numbers that when I multiply them together, I get 12 as the answer. And when I add them together, I get 7 as the answer. Okay, so we have to pay attention to signs. This is a positive 12 and a positive 7. So I need numbers that multiply to positive 12 and add to positive 7. That means both of my numbers are going to be positive. A positive times a positive would give me a positive, and a positive plus a positive would also give me positive 7. Okay, so to solve this, I need to figure out what numbers can I put here that multiply to 12 and add up to 7. Now, some of you might be able to figure this out really quickly. But when the numbers change, or if you are not as up on your times tables, you can always make a list. So what are things that multiply to 12? Well, I could do 1 times 12. All right, but if I add those together, I'd get 13, and I need 7. I could do 2 times 6, but 2 plus 6 is 8, and I need 7. What else could I multiply to get 12? Well, 3 times 4. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 plus 4 is 7. So my numbers are going to be positive 3 and positive 4. So that is what I'm going to fill in here. One factor is x plus 3, and the other factor is x plus 4. Okay, and check your answer by distributing. What that means is if I were to multiply this back out, I should get x squared plus 7x plus 12 as my answer. So I'm going to do that now. If I multiply here, x times x is x squared, x times 4 is 4x, 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times 4 is 12. When I combine my like terms in the middle, I get x squared plus 7x plus 12. So that's how I know how I factored correctly, is if I multiply my factors, my answers, back out, I get the original problem as my answer. Okay, so here's a second example that I will do with you. So I know I'm going to have two sets of parentheses with an x in each of them. All right. My numbers have to multiply to negative 6, add to positive 5. So if I need to multiply to a negative number and add to a positive number, I'm going to need one negative number and one positive number. In your notes, this says plus 7x. I want you to change it. Change that example to 5. So I need numbers that multiply to negative 6 and add to positive 5. Okay, so again, I'm going to make my list. So I could do 1 times 6. All right, I could do 2 times 3. I could do 3 times 2, or I could do 6 times 1. So if I made this a negative 1, all right, and I'm just going to make the first ones negative. Okay, negative 1 times 6 would be negative 6. Negative 1 plus 6 would be positive 5. So that solves my puzzle. So I have x minus 1 because this is negative 1, and x plus 6. All right. You have 2 more examples right there. I want you to pause the video here and try these 2 examples, and then when you come back, I'll have answers for you to check. All right, you should have y minus 1, y minus 4, z minus 6, z plus 2. If you did not get those and don't understand why, then you need to put a big star by this problem or this problem, and make sure you ask about it when you get to class. Now, a second part to this is we can also use factoring to solve equations. So if I have something like this, x squared minus 6x plus 8 equals 0. We can't solve this using our normal method of getting x by itself because I have two different things here. I have x squared and I have regular x, okay, and I can't combine them. And if I move one to the other side, that doesn't help me solve. So we are going to solve this by factoring. Okay, step one of solving by factoring is, if necessary, move everything to one side so that the equation is equal to 0. This one is already equals 0. Okay, but if there were anything over here, we would need to move it to the other side. Before you can factor, the equation has to be equal to 0. Step 2 then is to factor. So this x squared minus 6x plus 8, I'm going to factor like we've been doing. Alright, so this is an x, this is an x. I'm going to make my puzzle. I need to multiply to 8 and add to negative 6. Okay, that means I know I'm going to have two negative numbers. Numbers that multiply to 8, 1 and 8, but that would be negative 9, 4, and 2. Negative 4 times negative 2 would be positive 8. Negative 4 plus negative 2 would be negative 6. So my factors are x minus 4 and x minus 2. Alright, the last step then, remember this is still equal to 0, is to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So I'm going to come up with two separate equations and two separate answers here. I have x minus 4 equals 0 and also x minus 2 equals 0. So now I have two different equations that I'm going to solve. So this one I would need to add 4 to both sides and I would get x equals 4. On this one I'm going to add 2 to both sides and I'm going to get x equals 2. So I have two answers to this equation. X can equal 4 or x can equal 2. Okay, this is another solving by factoring, but here it's not already set equal to 0 for us. So I need to move this 18 over to the other side to make it equal to 0. Okay, and when I do that, now over here, p squared, 3p, 18 without a p. None of those are like terms, okay? So I can't combine any of them. They're just going to stay all over there. And then I'm going to follow my steps. So I'm going to factor. So I'm going to have p and p. I need numbers that multiply to negative 18 and add to negative 3. That is going to end up being negative 6 and positive 3. That multiplies to negative 18, adds up to negative 3. So I have p minus 6 and p plus 3 equals 0. Then I set each factor equal to 0. And I solve. So here I would add 6 to both sides and get p equals 6. Over here I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides and get p equals negative 3. Those are both solutions to this equation. Alright, you have one more example there. I want you to try that on your own, and then that's the first thing that we'll do when you get to class is check your answer to this problem.